All right, so I want to make this video because it's a bunch of stuff that I want to get to realistically, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to start making. You know what I'm saying? You gotta start somewhere. You know what I'm saying? You gotta get the information out. So anyway, I'm just gonna jump straight to it. Like the problem with capitalism and why it's holding us back as a society. The the simplest way for me to explain what capitalism is, I guess, if you don't understand what it is, it's just it's basically a system where private owners can utilize products and services for some type of financial gain, to receive some type of revenue or something like that. And the reason I have an issue with it is because the whole basis of which is founded on, to me, is flawed in the sense of excuse me, we don't own anything as a people, as a collective species of life. There isn't anything that we can lay claim to in this universe. Like the whole third dimension that we live in, there's nothing that we can lay claim to. And I say that because there's nothing that we didn't create ourselves. We're human beings are a multi-cellular organism, which means it's a amalgamation, accumulation of a bunch of single cell organisms that work together in order to evolve into what we are today, as far as science explains it. And to break that down into either even simpler level, we're a species that comes from, not even species, life is a combination of things. It's a combination of quantum elements. You got quarks, you got gluons, you got all that cool stuff. Then you got protons, neutrons, electrons. Then you got all that makes elements, and all these different elements that are combined to make the different things that we deal with and come in contact to and discover and rediscover in life is the same things that make us up. Now, the reason I say we don't own anything is because there's no information that one human being, especially at this point in life, like as of today, whatever date it is, October something something, 2023, right? If every if all the information was kept private, imagine the amount of things we wouldn't know. Like, imagine the things that would be kept to just one specific section of people, one specific like, we don't own the information. You see what I'm saying? And it's the public sharing of the information that has allowed us to gain the things that we have today, that we're able to use and utilize in life as we know it. Be it technology, electronics, uh, different equations and algorithms that we use, different combinations of elements and things of that nature. We needed that information to become public simply to allow access to it from more people, which allowed us to gain more perspectives on how to utilize it. No one person was able to put all this information together and build everything that we have today. No one person even focused on so many different factors and factions of life that they were able to come to develop all the things that we have today as a conglomerate. All the different, like I say, technologies, automobiles, cell phones, light bulbs, batteries, you know what I'm saying? Electric toothbrushes, a portable fan, you know what I'm saying? Just all the different things that we utilize. Pillows, pillowcases, the aglet on your tennis shoe that keep your shoestring from fraying, you know what I'm saying, and coming undone over time. Just little stuff like that. Like, that comes from an accumulation of knowledge, and that knowledge being shared amongst different people. So my issue with us laying claim to owning things and ownership of things is the selfishness that comes with it, and the fear of losing something because we're allowing free use or open use to the public for the things that we all have and have to this day. You know what I'm saying? Everybody want to own stuff. Everybody want to have stuff. And I know a lot of people like to throw this under like communism and stuff like that, which is like realistically, that's another thing that we need to get out of. We need to stop simplifying things and summarizing entire ideas and speeches and ideologies under one word, because that's simplifying it doesn't always make it efficient, because it leaves it open to interpretation. Some things aren't meant to be interpreted except by the way that it was presented. So when you say things like capitalism or socialism or communism, what you're doing is leaving it open to interpretation. What should be being done is instead is a full description of what it is that's looking to be done, what's being said, the words that's being used, how they're being used, the way they're being placed in the sentences, and that gives you a full understanding or perspective of what it is that's being said and what you need to learn from it. Like, and I say that because if we just look at one of the most recent issues, the two of the most recent times that I could think of where capitalism has held us back as a society. For one, the most recent one to me personally would be America's attack on solar power. So, brief history behind that is the United States placed like 200% tax, you know what I'm saying, on any solar energy equipment that was being imported from China. Why? Because United States had vested interest in the oil companies. Now, it doesn't matter if you believe in this is my thing. We need to get out of belief. What is belief? That's not even a word that I really want to just deal with right now. Let's deal with facts and statistics. The statistics say that we're warming up the earth. We're emitting harmful chemicals into the atmosphere that we have to live in and exist in. So it's just like living in a bubble and somebody keep farting in it. Who wants to be in that? You know what I'm saying? Just because, you know what I'm saying, I feel good after I fart. Yeah, that's cool, but go do that outside the bubble. Don't do that in here with me, and I gotta inhale that stench and, you know what I'm saying, all them byproducts of your body that's waste that you decided to blow out. Whatever chemical reaction going on in your body, I don't want to be a part of it. That's essentially what we doing in Earth's atmosphere with carbon emissions. Why do you think it's global warming is a natural occurring thing? Because thermal energy is normal. And if you understand history, then you know at the core of this is a ball of heat, a ball of elements that's at a very high temperature, and we're formed around that. Then you get to the mantle and the crust and all that cool stuff, right? Like, it's not that type of science class. Like, this is why school is important. Everybody wants to know what you need to know that for. That's the problem. We shouldn't live in a world where you don't understand the basic building blocks of the life that you're living, the place that you're living in, the thing that you're living on. But because we've become so wrapped up into a capitalist society, we've created a lot of jobs and byproducts of that don't require you to do any thinking. You don't need to know anything. That's why people are so worried about robots and artificial intelligence taking jobs. It's not that they're taking jobs, it's that they're completing tasks that are that menial that we can create a tool that can do it. It's like once upon a time there wasn't wrenches. Once upon a time it wasn't screwdrivers. Once upon a time it wasn't jackhammers. It was people doing that stuff, and they had very basic and barbaric means of getting it done. And throughout the evolution of time, we found more efficient ways to get it done. Why? Because it didn't make sense to do it the way we was doing it. It didn't make sense for you to sit there and be smacking a hammer against a little chisel and beating and beating and beating and beating and eventually cracking this rock open. Why? When you can invent something that can do that in a fraction of the time and save you manpower, allow you to spend your, would you rather spend 13 hours out of your day chiseling or 3 hours out of your day using the jackhammer, and then you have 10 extra hours to go do a million other things with your life? That's the point. So we're talking about jobs being taken. These aren't jobs that are, these are jobs that are, that have the ability to be taken. That's what's being missed about a lot of this stuff. I remember I worked in the hotel industry, and I was telling somebody that, like, yeah, pretty soon they not, it's gonna be like self checkout at Walmart. They're not gonna need the person at the front desk as much as they do today. Now, will there be, eventually it's probably not gonna be a person there, you feel me? Because what task are you completing? If we're able to put a system right there, and that system is able to analyze everything that's being asked of it and then produce the result that the person is asking it to do, what do we need a person there for outside of your ego and your pride and your need to feel like you contributing? Well, you're actually not. And that's not a bad thing. What we're saying is now you have the freedom to go learn how to contribute to something, right? So like I'm saying, you got solar energy. I know I went off on a tangent, but it's probably going to be a lot of that. So anyway, you had this tax that was placed on solar energy equipment because of the vested interest that the United States had in oil, natural gas, whatever you want to call it, in oil and gas. The mining of it, the refining of it, the distribution of it, and things of that nature. Just the whole manufacturing process of getting oil and gas into a usable thing for the everyday consumer, for us as people, right? Well, the byproducts of that is causing harm to the world around us. And I'm not speaking of it as in the sense of, oh, we need to protect the environment because it's a feeling, sensing, sentient organism. Even though there is an argument to be had for that. The point being is because we live in that environment and we're making it harder for people that live in this environment to live in a sustainable and safe way. If you live below sea level and we keep heating this spot up, guess what? It's going to start causing issues with water rising. That's going to start causing, there's byproducts. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's science, is what I'm saying. These are facts. If you do something, if you put an input out, you are going to get an output. Input, output. That's the way this works. You can't step on something and not cause a chain of events and reactions behind that. It's not impossible. You being here is causing a chain of events, whether you like that or not, whether you want to accept that or not, right? So now we're in a place where all of a sudden car companies are talking about within the next 20 to 30 years, we're all going to be using it. It's going to be all electric vehicles. Why? Because they finally got to a point where it is fiscally, financially in a place where they can benefit from it. The main reason being there's too many people that have become educated about the issue. There's too many people that are aware of what carbon emissions are doing to the planet and those and what the byproducts of that means for us here on Earth. You know what I'm saying? As a human being, what that means for us. You know what I'm saying? You got countries full of smog where they can't see the sun, or you know what I'm saying, where it, like, why would you want to have a cloud of smoke in the sky? You know what I'm saying? Like, you breathing in and inhaling. That's just like, come on now. Like, if you don't smoke cigarettes, do you want to sit locked in the car with somebody that's chain smoking? No. Why? Because you understand you're inhaling that tobacco. All those products that you understand may not be most beneficial or healthy for someone, you're going to receive those. That's the same things. You wouldn't stick your mouth on the back of a car exhaust and suck all that air in. But regardless of if you put your mouth on it, if it's blowing into the air, there's a bubble, basically. That stuff got to come back down. It don't float out into space. Some of it might, but that's an issue in itself because our atmosphere is supposed to be sealed off from space. in the sense of there needs to be a level of separation from outer space and here. How would you breathe? You can't breathe out of space. So why would you want a big hole that, in my mind, that would seem like oxygen would be getting sucked? That seems like there would be an issue there. If I was uh, living in a bubble full of oxygen and you poke a hole in my bubble and outside of that bubble it's no oxygen, something's, the equilibrium not gonna balance out in a way that's beneficial to me. That's where I'm at with it, right? And so that's one of the first things that I have an issue with when it comes to this capitalist society and ideology we have of we need to, like, people being so stuck on owning things. You know what I'm saying? That's really the reality of that. Is that's something inside of you that you need to deal with. The fact that you feel like you can only find value by having tangible things, or this needs to be mine. Why should somebody else benefit from my work? You're benefiting from somebody else's work. What if the person that taught you everything you knew decided that they didn't want to teach none of that and they want to hold all that information to themselves? You wouldn't have what you have. It don't matter what job you have. If you're a basketball player, if everybody that came before you leading up to the person that invented basketball decided that they wanted to keep that to themselves, do you think you wouldn't be playing basketball? If you engineer, if you're a welder, if you a scientist, if you a nurse, if you a doctor, if you a truck driver, you don't get where you are if it wasn't people previous to you that decided to allow these things to be had by other people. And my issue with it is, a lot of people like to say capitalism is the driving force behind people doing a lot of these things because they want it to because it pushes people to want to have resources, and you had to figure out a way to utilize the things around you in order to get what you have now. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people being paid a lot of money to do things that benefit the world none at all. Like, there's not a tangible good that you receive from these things. How many entertainers do we have that don't bring a tangible good to anybody except for an image for you to emulate, where you don't be a tangible good to nobody? You know what? Rappers wouldn't be able to get their music out to nobody if we didn't have all these scientists that created all these different means of recording the music, creating the music, distributing the music. Like, you wouldn't have the career that you keep looking up to. You know what I'm saying? Athletes, you wouldn't have any of the things you have if it wasn't for science and scientists utilizing and combining all of these things in order for an idea or a thought to be engineered into a physical and tangible product. And capitalism can't be the reason behind that, because most of those people didn't benefit as much as the people that just used the thing that they created. You see what I'm saying? Even when we go back to Tesla with AC/DC energy and who was it? Tesla, and I want to say, oh my God, I want to say it was Edison. I don't know. I don't know. Quote me. Go find out for yourself. Realistically. But you had a whole smear campaign against AC/DC energy being used, which is what we use now. Realistically, that's my issue with this whole thing. All that time that we wasted because of capitalism and people worried about keeping their investments and their interest and their capital and their finances straight is the reason why it took so long for us to have an energy that we use anyway. These power plants use that exact same energy to send lights and power to your outlets in your wall and in your home. So this whole idea that capitalism is what we need is very much so false. And I say that even more because look at Tesla, the person that invented the thing that started it. What did he want to do? He wanted to give out free energy. When he was building all these different inventions and things of that nature, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and trying to figure out how to utilize the atmosphere around us to transmit and send electricity and all these things, why was he looking to do that? Because he understood that he didn't have nothing to do with this information. He didn't just pull it out of thin air. No, it was built off the backs of his predecessors that put that information out there. And he understood the benefits of that information being put out there. If nobody would have taught him, if he wouldn't have learned what he learned, we wouldn't have what we have. to be feeling so selfish and possessive about things that we don't actually own. You don't know how half the things you own work to be able to recreate it. So why are you so stiff on wanting to show that it's yours? And the reality is, a lot of this stuff is what people don't want to tell the truth about. Is this social status? Whether people want to believe it or not, this is just where I'm coming from with it as far as science that's done created this cell phone for me to be able to have this conversation with you, done decided and done dictated it, done laid out before me. So I can't really argue with the fact that I'm recording this video through these headphones and you can watch it through your cell phone. So like, unless you want to argue with that's what's happening, we ain't really got nothing to talk about, because like those are facts, right? So the same way that you understand all this is happening, whether you know how it's working or not, is the same way that whether you understand it or not, the same people that created this technology subscribe to the information that was necessary to create the technology. And that information says that we evolved from animals. What do we understand about animals? We understand that males and females want to procreate. What does that mean? They want to make babies. They want to continue their genetic information and code being passed down. When you think about, I love using flamingos as a analogy, because flamingos are pink, right? Flamingo's diet mainly consists of shrimp. The amount of shrimp that the flamingo consumes directly affects how pink the flamingo gets. So, when it's mating season and all the flamingos get together, wherever they get together, and the females are choosing the males and the males are trying to be chosen by the females, you know what the determining factor for most of it is? How pink is the flamingo? Why? Because it suggests that that flamingo has the correct genetic code to maximize its ability to eat shrimp, which is the food that we eat in order to survive. So if you're a female flamingo, you're looking for the pinkest male flamingo. Why? Because you know if he gives you a baby, that baby is going to have the same genetic information that male flamingo, that's the pinkest of all the pink flamingos you see, you get his genetic code to mix with yours. On top of that, if you as the female flamingo are eye-catching enough to the male flamingo, you understand that there's something in you, whether you can see yourself or not, that has a high probability of attracting the male that you want to get. Let's assume for conversation's sake it's the same thing. So if males choose the female flamingo that they gonna mess with, it will most likely be by the one that's the most eye-catching, right? If it's the most eye-catching, then it's probably the pinkest one. If it's not the pinkest one, it would be the one that's able to secure the male at the greatest ability. Be it maybe you just aggressive enough to fight off all the other female flamingos. Maybe you got there the fastest. Maybe your senses are in tune. Whatever ability your genetic code has that got you the pinkest male flamingo is going to mix with the pinkest male flamingo. And then we're going to put them together. And guess what? Now you have optimized your genetic code and passing it on to the next generation. And that next generation is going to continue to do the same thing. And it's a hierarchy. You go lower and lower and lower and lower and lower to the point where the least pink male flamingo probably not gonna get the mate. You see what I'm saying? If he don't get the mate, when he dies, his genetic code dies with him. That's a failed code. That code doesn't work. We won't get that in the next generation. So next season or next X amount of seasons where the baby flamingos done finally grew up from that generation previous to them that was all together mating, guess what? He's not going to be there. So that iteration is done. And then we continue to get iterations, and you continue to get the best coded genetics for the given situation. I say all that to bring that back to us as human beings, whether we like it or not. That's what we come from. That's embedded in us. So once upon a time, maybe at the beginning of humanity, brute strength may have been what was necessary. Realistically, it would have to have been what male can protect himself enough to even see a female, to be seen by a female. So you're going to have some type of physical intelligence, some type of inert ability to protect yourself, to provide for yourself, to do all the things necessary to live day to day in what we don't have now, which was then the jungle, the bare bones of the world. There's no houses, there's no weapons unless you created it yourself. So if you was smart enough to grab a rock and smack it against the tiger's head, guess what? You live to fight another day. And guess what else? Now you know it's programmed in your body. That's a memory now. You now have programmed yourself to know, if I grab a rock and hit this thing with it, I can defend myself. Then you get new iterations, and you continue and you continue and you continue and you continue. That's what males and females are looking for. It's no different than out in the animal kingdom. We are part of the animal kingdom. We are animals. Like, that's pride on our part that's making people not want to identify with the root of where they are. Whether other things apply to that or not, that is the basis of the code. Same as everything else that's not specific to animals. Plants do the same thing. Bees do the same thing. Like, if you're not producing pollen as a flower, your code's not going to get reproduced. You're not going to get shared with another flower and produce. It is the same thing. It's all about producing, procreating, recreating, replenishing the earth, reiterations, improvements, evolutions. That's what this is, right? So when we get to a point where we can understand as a whole species what is driving people to want to own and possess things as mere tools of social status in order to secure the highest level mate that we can, in order to continue passing down our genetic information, which is the whole goal here, then we can start dealing with that the right way. Men wanting to show that they have the ability to provide whatever the female wants heightens his ability to reproduce, to procreate, to inject his genetic code into women. Women showing that they have the genetic code that men want heightens their ability to receive genetic information from said man and continue to mold and meld his with hers. Each human is 50% of their parent from both sides. You're 50% of your mom's side, 50% of your dad's side. However you decide to split that up, guess what? That's your specific genetic code. We all just have one. Down to your fingerprints. That code comes from you as a child deciding what you deem. You as a fetus, you as a egg and a sperm, breaking down the egg DNA and the sperm DNA and putting it back together in the way that you deem the most necessary and suitable for you to survive as you grow. That's what that is. That's what men are doing. That's what women are doing. So when we can break out of this idea that we want to own all these things because it's good for the world, no, that has nothing to do with it. And the reality is, the sooner that we get to a point where we all have a, I want to say baseline, but when we get to a point where we all work and come from that specific place of thinking, then all it does is even more is maximize the genetic codes even more that we're going to be passing down, because now you're aware of these things. Now you know, as a woman and as a man, oh, I'm looking to procreate. I'm looking to pass down my genetic information to the next generation. Guess what that does? Now it heightens your ability to sense the correct mate. That's why we have so many single mothers and single fathers, because we're not understanding what we really need to be looking for in a mate. Beauty is a part of it. Beauty is symmetrical. Like, we understand that now. We understand that most people deem beauty as symmetrical. You know what symmetrical is? That's math, that's science, that's your body being proportioned right. That's your physical balance on both sides, your left side and your right side. How much does it compare and contrast? How much does the top half of your body plus the bottom half of your body work? How does the length of your arms to your legs work? We understand all that. That's super simple. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, these are facts. That's why most people tend to agree um, across the board on who attractive and unattractive people are. Now, there's a gray area because there's a spectrum. For one, if you're not that attractive of a person, but you've been deemed by society because you have some imbalances somewhere in your physical symmetry, then of course your view on symmetry will be a little bit tainted. Why? Because the interactions that you have with that beauty. If you're a male whose proportions and symmetry aren't necessarily all together, what you're going to interact with is a lot of males who have that proportion and symmetry getting more attention from females who have that same proportion and symmetry. Now, as the unproportioned and asymmetrical man, you're going to still be attracted to the same things that every other man is, which is going to be a evenly proportioned and a symmetrically sound and solid woman. The difference being, your interactions aren't going to go as good. So you're going to hierarchy. You're going to work closer to what you can get. If I can't get that, I don't care for it. If the fruit is too high up on the tree for me to be able to climb to, or I get tired, how high can I climb before I don't get tired? How high can I climb without getting tired? And then I'll eat from that branch. Maybe it's not as high as that tree. Maybe the fruit is better. Why? Because it's closer to the sun and it's closer to all these things that are beneficial. You're right. But for me and what I can get, it's at this level. So what are you going to start doing? You're going to start seeing the beauty in that level. You're going to appreciate that level more. That's what's going on here. It's super simple. Like, this is why I say capitalism is holding us back from that, because we've placed ourselves into a societal trap to an extent, or a societal illusion of ideologies where we think, I say we, now I don't really want to say we because I don't include myself in that, because I've learned myself enough to have elevated from that way of thinking to a certain extent. I understand what it is about a woman that is attractive to me. And I understand that those visual cues, those sensory stimulants that I'm receiving from a woman is the mathematics and the proportions that I'm made to appreciate, because that's the universal language of the universe. That's the universal language, mathematics and symmetry and proportions. We can break all these things down. You got the Fibonacci sequence, you know what I'm saying, that gives a shape of a snail's shell. Why it allows it to do that, you know what I'm saying, have the spiral it has, and why that spiral can be found in so many other different things. It's because mathematics is something that can be universally equal, you know what I'm saying, but how it expresses itself can be different. However, because it's the same formula, we can understand that different values and variables will change the numbers that we get. The formula is the same. That's why formulas are represented by numbers. Are represented by letters. You have the Pythagorean theorem: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's because if you do a, b, and c, it doesn't matter what numbers you use. The bottom line formula is the same. The only difference is the way it expresses itself will be either bigger or smaller. You see what I'm saying? I understand that. But when we're living in a society where we distracted and detracted from that, even the understanding of that, the need to understand that and to know that and to be educated on these things and to be able to utilize that information in day-to-day life is what's holding us back. There's plenty of people that know how to get money. Money isn't a thing that was invented with the universe. Money is a thing that we created in order to be able to deal with each other on a different level. It's just like language. We speak English now. Today, there are people just like you and me that speak tens of different languages. You know what I'm saying? We have Indian, you have Arabic, you have Spanish, you have Italian, you have all these different languages. Chinese, you have Korean, you have Vietnamese, Russian, Serbian. You have different languages. It's all to communicate the same human experience. Just because a Serbian doesn't speak English doesn't mean that they experience a different life. No, it means that the values that they apply to the same equation that I use are different. However, if I learn their values and they learn my values, which is just language at this point, I don't mean values as far as your moral compass and things of that nature, but I do find it interesting that we call values values. In different instances, it's the same word. Then I'm able to understand them on a different level. Why is just me learning their language going to completely transform the experience I have with that person? Because it's the human experience. The formula is human. Experience, that's going to be the answer regardless. The only thing we're going to pull and put in is the language that's used. Once we get that on the same level, then we kill a whole lot of things that's going on that's confusing us, right? So like I'm saying about capitalism and the issue that it's caused us to place value on incorrect things. That's why when we see someone that has on nice clothes, that tends to send off signals. It's just like the shrimp. But in reality, it's not, because that doesn't mean that person is educated on any of the things that they need to be educated on in order to be a good parental figure to the next generation. A lot of times you don't even know if it's real or fake. You know what I'm saying? You got plenty of people I've bought fake shoes because I didn't care. I done bought some fake Jordan 12s. Why? Because I was finna work in them. I needed some all black shoes. I wanted some nice looking all black shoes. Went to the little hood store. Oh, bet they got fake Jordan 12s in here. They're not being sold as fake Jordan 12s, but they're fake Jordan 12s. They're not an official colorway that's coming from the Nike Jordan company. Did that matter? No. Why? Because it's a pair of shoes. The formula is shoe. That's what the formula is. And then the values you start placing on it is where we get to throwing ourselves off. So when you start placing value into the wrong thing, that's how you start getting the wrong answer, which is you're looking to have your genetic information passed down in the most beneficial way in order to provide that next generation of your genetic code the ultimate and the maximized potential and ability to thrive and survive and make it in the next world, and then do the same thing you did, which is pass down that information. We're living in a time where a lot of that information that's being passed down is not causing to thrive. It doesn't mean that you're not able to do it. You're just not stopping anybody from procreating and having kids and passing down genetic information. But what it is stopping is from a lot of people being able to train correctly in that information. A lot of mamas not training their daughter. Don't They're training their daughters on, you know what I'm saying? I got your daddy because like I was cute. I was easy for him to get, things of that nature. A lot of dudes is not actually teaching their kids that I got your mama because I dress nice. I got your mama because I knew how to speak. I got your mama because I was the star of the football team and I was looking like I was going to go somewhere. And she seen the potential for me to be able to provide and protect and do all these things that you thought is what you was looking for, or you saw the signs of what it was going to be that protected your genetic information and helped it maximize its potential to grow and thrive and become what it really needed to be and sprout into even bigger and more blossoming thing. But guess what? A lot of that is a facade. A lot of that it comes from even less training, and even less training or training from people that's not really teaching you the true meaning behind what it is they're doing. Mainly because they don't know. They don't know why they're doing it. They just know that, oh, he get girls, I want girls, I do what he do. Oh, okay, now you got a lot of women, you done made a lot of kids, but you not trained in nothing it takes to maximize the ability of your kid. So when they come around, who knows? Who knows? Then the next generation that they create, who knows? So it can be a whole lot of that going on. And if realistically we look at the world, a lot of people that's having a lot of kids, not really training these children, not really giving them the information they need, not really putting them in a position to maximize their ability. Now they probably gonna be able to make some more kids, but that's not a skill. That's not a thing. That's where broken homes is coming from. And I'm not here to be preaching whether or not it's supposed to be monogamous or polygamous. That's not it. You don't want to have that conversation with me because I just told you it came from the animal kingdom, and I don't know about no monogamy that's happening in the animal kingdom. So I think you already know where I stand with it. But realistically, I understand that we also are evolved enough to be able to make conscious decisions on our own on what we want our house to look like and how we want it to be. But I also understand that takes a level of understanding of the world around you, your uh your place within it, what your inputs are gonna be, and what outputs you're gonna get from that. Like that's the difference. It's a lot of people that's out here doing these things and they don't understand what they doing. You got a lot of people that's driving cars, don't mean they know how a car works for them to fix it if it break down. All right, that's kind of what's going on. If you having kids, you don't necessarily know how to fix it when that kid have a problem. Don't mean you can't get it fixed. Don't mean that you can get it fixed. You can take it somewhere and they can fix it for you. We got mechanics where you can be like, oh, my car making this sound. Can you fix it? Guess what? They can fix it. And they're going to tell you 9 times out of 10 if there's something you can do to prevent this from happening again or what you did to cause it. They're going to tell you that. There's a lot of people that's going to take that information and do nothing with it. They're going to be back again for the same issue. They're going to be back again with another issue because, yeah, you taught me that, but you didn't teach me this. So I'm going to have to keep learning all these different things about cars. Or it's just going to, I'm in a position to just keep getting it fixed. So what are they going to teach their kid when it comes down to driving? They may or they may not. They may come from the school of, you know what, you'll find out as you drive the car. Like I did. Some people perfectly fine teaching with that. I wasn't trained. I ain't going to train you. Then there's other people that's going to be like, oh, you know what? Throughout my time of driving vehicles, I learned all these different things. Or I was taught all these different things before I ever drove a vehicle. There's levels to it. So I'm going to make sure that you don't have to do some of these things. Hey, make sure you get your oil checked. Why? Because it's going to affect the car. There's a lot of ways that you can learn that. There's a lot of ways it can be taught. There's some people that are prepared and have went through their experiences in a way that allows them, that put them in the position that they are. Whether that is, hey, I'm going to teach my kid. Hey, I'm going to let my kid find out. Oh, I thought you knew. You seem pretty smart. There's a lot of ways that could go. And the reality is, that's what we up against. But if we can all get to a baseline of understanding and education, which is what school was about. That's what education was about. That's why I keep speaking to math and science. You know, reading too, obviously, but you're not gonna be able to do science if you can't read, because science is the words and math is the numbers. So once you get the words and the numbers together, you'll be able to blossom, do unimaginable things to the mind that isn't schooled in that. You know what I'm saying? And guess what? You'll still be able to imagine the things that the unschooled mind is, because you don't have any of that information. So if you didn't have any of that information and you can still imagine these things, guess what I can imagine with this information? I can go bigger, I can go broader. I can see what you're saying and expand upon it. Or I can make it a reality because, oh wow, I understand the actual steps and the processes that it'll take to get me there. Like, that's why I'm so big on education. Do you understand that education once upon a time wasn't available? Like, the public school system ain't always existed. It ain't always been something that was just around. This is where education comes in. People, if you knew history, you know that once upon a time that was reserved for a certain type of person, for a certain level of people, for a certain status of people. That's the benefits of the time that we in now. Once upon a time, there was systems in place where you had to be a certain level. The people before you was going to have elevated themselves up to a level high enough that it allotted you the potential and the ability to be placed in these places where they understand that this information is necessary in order for you to be a valuable person, in order for you to decide your value, for you to understand what value is, and therefore decide how you want to be valuable. You place the value on yourself versus people at lower tiers who don't know any of these things and their values told to them. All right, since you haven't learned anything, I'll teach you something, but I'm going to teach you what I want to teach you. Go do this job that I don't want to do, and I'll pay you something for it. A lot of people is perfectly fine with that. There's nothing wrong with it. But the reality is, the more educated you become, the more you realize, oh man, I'm only doing this because you don't want to do it. I'm not. I could realistically go find somebody else that don't know nothing, and I can get them to do it, and then I can go do something else with my time. That's a system all in itself. There's plenty of people that have not been educated at all in history because they weren't ever given that information. Nobody gave it to them. They didn't feel the need to learn it. They weren't placed in situations that allowed them to get it or know that it existed. That's why people say ignorance is bliss. If you don't know, you don't know you don't know. So therefore, you know everything you need to know, or everything that you know, you know you know. I know this. I don't know that I don't know how to tie my shoes. So what am I missing out about tying shoes? Maybe we come from sandals. It wasn't no tying shoes. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't wearing shoes that required being tied. Oh, okay, well maybe there's a certain quality of shoe you never got to put on your foot. So you don't understand that there's higher qualities of shoe that you can put on your foot, which means your feet have a higher quality experience in this realm. It can be as simple as that. Quality of fabrics. I'm not knocking nobody for wanting to wear nice clothes, but do you know why you want to wear nice clothes? Do you want to buy it just because it's expensive? Do you know why it's expensive? Do you know that the difference between this brand and that brand is the quality of the quality of the fabric, the quality of the designer? There are people that have been schooled in design that know the science behind the art. So they can explain and express what it is that is going on with this clothing. Down to the fabric. Oh, this fabric feels this way. This is a blend of this fabric and that fabric, which makes it more breathable, which means that you don't get as stuffy, you don't get as hot. So when you wear it and it's summertime, you can put it on and the wind that's blowing around you flows more freely through the garment, and you feel more. It keeps you cooler versus having on this blend with that blend, which is not as breathable. So when you out in the same area that the next person is that got on the more breathable fabric, you not having as good a time. Why? Because you're hot. Your body temperature's rising. That's causing effects to your body. That's science that you need to understand, which is affecting all the other things that you're going through. Oh, this is why, like I say, this is why education is so important. because some of the most educated minds aren't the ones that's so focused on possessing things and owning things, because they understand that they're only as smart as they are because it was smart people previous to them that openly gave that knowledge. Do you know how many writers of books that we've had that didn't make all the money, that wasn't the most renowned person in the world, didn't have all the girls, this, that, and the third? Why? Because they understood the information is what was important. You got people out here that was thinking the money is what was important, and the things and the status is what was most important. And all they did was utilize all the things that this person that created it for them to do that, because they were happy with that. They understood the world and what it would do for the future. And if it wasn't for those people, can you imagine the world we'd be in if we only had people that was worried about what they would gain from these things, what them specifically would be gaining from it? We wouldn't have much, because they'd be so focused on keeping it to themselves that if you're not directly related to this person or a benefit to this person, you don't get anything. How many books have you read for free? You know how much information we get now versus a few years back, just because we've had people giving us technologies that, because they put it out, and maybe it did cost a lot of money, but once they put it out and more people got their hands on it, it became cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. I just read something like precious metals. A lot of people don't understand why precious metals are precious, mainly because it's not an abundance of them. It's precious because it's a lower amount of that than anything else on the earth. So you got things like gold and silver and all these, palladium and platinum and iridium and some more stuff going on. Like, these things are valuable because it's not a lot of it. First and foremost, it's not an abundance of this metal. So that means if you get it, you already have something that there's not a surplus of. So you're in a smaller percentage of people that even will be able to have it. And beyond that, the benefits of things like gold and silver, a lot of people don't know. What really makes these things valuable is the fact that they don't oxidize. You know what oxidize means? Rust. Rust is what happens when oxygen continuously is hitting up against an object and it causes it to change forms. That's why if you have a metal that rusts easily, the issue with that is there's a chemical reaction that's happening called oxidization. The problem with that is if you remove the rust from that thing, you now have less, because whatever metal you had was changed chemically by the oxygen, and that caused it to be less of what it was and more of what it is after oxygen affects it. So if it was 100 pounds of this metal, whatever, don't let me lie to you about it. I ain't really worried about the non-precious metals because it's a lot of them. A lot of it, not them, a lot of it around. More than the other metals that are precious because it's not that much of them. If you have 100 pounds of it starting off, and then over time it gets oxidized and oxidized and oxidized, which means it gets more rust and more rust and more rust. When you remove the rust, you might have 97 pounds, which can still be considered a lot, but it's 3 less pounds than what you started off with. And what happens to those pounds that you now have been transitioned into rust? You got to figure that out, but it ain't the original plan. So you probably want something that's going to be as close to the original plan as possible, right? So if you have 100 pounds of gold and you find out over time, man, I came back and it's like 99.9 pounds of gold, but that one 97. Oh, well, I want the one that changed the least over time. It might be 100 pounds of gold still. It might not rust. What would you want? The one that gonna give you most of what you was looking to have. I want to keep most of that, right? I want it to stay what it was when I found it. Gold, silver, palladium, platinum, iridium, these things don't necessarily rust as much, which makes it valuable because it retains the state that you had it in. If you made a gold sword, it stays a gold sword for a much longer time than another metal. Well, if I want to kind of ensure that whatever benefits are of that sword that I made, whether it's this, whatever I did to make that sword be a good sword and it's gold, I want it to stay that way. I want it to stay in that form for as long as possible.